any big supermarket has got to be one of the most amazing expressions of ingenuity in American culture. For centuries, the only way to eat grains was as a big sloppy bowl of gluey glop, gruel or oatmeal, bulgur, cream of wheat, or porridge. Then a little over 100 years ago, some 19th century health food nuts got the idea to toast up those grainy tidbits. Thus, the cold cereal phenomenon was born. Now, we look down a football field-length supermarket aisle at floor-to-ceiling cereals that offer crunch, sugar, extra fiber, nuts, fruits, marshmallows, peanut butter, every color of the rainbow, and every size, shape, and texture imaginable. Now, I doubt if Mr. Kellogg could have ever dreamed that so many different products could be created out of his little flakes. When it comes to breakfast cereal, we seem to have no problem embellishing upon the way in which we refuel our body for the start of a new day. So why is it that in other areas of our life we're so stingy with our creativity? Why are we so unwilling to try coloring outside established lines? Too often we're content to conclude that there's no more room at the end for our faith to expand and be challenged to greater insights and grander hopes. Writer, preacher, teacher, pastor Erwin McManus has shaken up that snoring sensibility by daring to look at the Decalogue, the Big Ten, in a whole different way. Instead of looking at this list of do's and don'ts as the highest possible rung human beings may strive to reach on creation's ladder, McManus suggests that the 10 Commandments are the lowest possible standard of humane living. It's not that the behaviors ordered by God to the Israelites in the wilderness aren't commendable. It's not that the Decalogue isn't an excellent guide for human justice. It's just that the 10 Commandments aren't heaven's standards. McManus notes they are not the standards by which the angels live. They are not God's attempt to pull us up beyond the human into the spiritual. The 10 Commandments are the lowest possible standard of humane living. Now stop and consider what they demand of us. Maybe it would help if we rephrase them in, let's say, everyday language. Here we go. Hey, could you stop killing each other? Oh yeah, by the way, could you not steal each other's stuff? And it would be really, really helpful if you wouldn't lie to each other either. Oh, and here's a thought. Could you not take other people's husbands and wives and just sort of like keep your own? It's bad enough that we need to be told these words. After all, do you really forget to put your shoes on before you leaving the house for work? Or do you forget that you need to eat? Or overlook the fact that the bathtub faucet is still running? No, of course not. Those behaviors are just common sense, sheer survival skills, everyday coping mechanisms. But our moral and ethical common sense seems to be pretty dismal. We read the 10 Commandments and think they offer the be-all and end-all for human achievement. We put them on our walls and even in our judicial chambers. But in reality, God is giving us nice, soft, mushy cereal or oatmeal. The easiest stuff that we can get down with our baby teeth, character, and infantile spirit. The 10 Commandments aren't representative of the best we can be. They're representative of the least we can expect from each other and still remain human. We aren't anywhere near ready to see the whole breakfast cereal long aisle of possibilities that God has stocked up in heaven. McManus declares that anything below these standards is choosing to live like an animal, a barbarian. The 10 Commandments don't call us to the extraordinary spiritual life. They call us to stop dehumanizing one another. The law is the minimum of what it means to be human. The reason the law condemns us isn't because of our inability to live up to an extraordinary measure. We couldn't even pass the test with a D. When God gave Moses the Ten Commandments, God was establishing a nation for himself. God was giving them the tools to form an ethos that, through honoring him, would result in the nurturing and elevation of the human spirit. Nearly 65 years ago, on February the 28th, 1953, James Watson and Francis Crick walked into their local pub in Cambridge, England, to make a stunning lunchtime announcement. They discovered the secret of life, the chemical structure of DNA. Today, all of us are familiar with the beautiful, swirling double helix model of DNA's complex structure. Watson and Crick managed to unsnarl that swirl, breaking down the chemical compositions of these building blocks for life. Now, at the 65th anniversary of that discovery, scientists have managed to follow that double helix and create a rough draft of the human genome, the map of our genetic structure, a blueprint of humanity. Or is it? In truth, it seems now that the more we know about the structure of DNA, the more we know that it's only the base, the beginning, the rudiments. As Natalie Angier puts it in a New York Times article, DNA on its own does nothing. It can't make eyes blue, livers bilious, or brains bulging. In our search for the secret of life, we first thought we'd find the answers in the physical structure and chemical composition of DNA. Then we thought if we knew the DNA formula for each gene, we'd have it lived. Now, we're just beginning to understand that it is all about the proteins, not genes. According to Angier, DNA holds bare bones information, suggestions really, for the construction of the proteins of which all life forms are built. But that's it. DNA can't read those instructions. It can't divide. It can't keep itself clean or sit up properly. Proteins that surround it do all those tasks. Stripped of context within the body cells, those haggling, florid ecosystems of tens of thousands of proteinaceous fauna, DNA is helpless, speechless, DOA. When God confronted the Israelites in the wilderness and laid out for them the Ten Commandments, the Decalogue of life, God was providing us with a spiritual blueprint for a human being. The commandments spiral around each other, bringing a right relationship with God into a graceful dance with a right relationship with all our personal relationships. There are twin spines to the double helix, and there are twin spines to the double helix called the Decalogue. The twin spines of God's commandment, double helix, entwines the 6 commandments toward God, round with the last 4 commandments toward the neighbor. But just because we can see the strong, righteous, flexible structure that these commandments create, it doesn't mean we've got the secret to life. Like Watson and Crick, like all the human genome scientific pioneers, covenant people are spiritual pioneers, and we're just scratching the surface of what it means to be human, what it means to be created a little lower than the angels. The commandments don't give us an exhaustive list of right attitudes and good behaviors. They point us in God's direction and keep us attuned to the divine. But if we don't get the basics right, if we don't build our lives on this firm foundation that makes us humane. We can't begin to live as God is calling us to live. Let me take one of the 10 and show you what I mean. The psychoanalyst Sandor Ferenczi was a disciple of Sigmund Freud. Now, he identified a disorder he called Sunday neurosis. Today we call it workaholism. But it alludes to a condition that people today are having, the lack of Sabbath. And when we fail to find the rhythm of life that embraces both work and play, both labor and leisure, both breathing out and breathing in, both plow and pillow, lives go out of whack and we get sick. It's the Sabbath that keeps our workaholism in check. And the Sabbath is more than just not working. According to Judith Shulevitz, in her New York Times Magazine article arguing for the need to bring back the Sabbath, the Jewish invention of the Sabbath invented the idea of social equality. The Israelite Sabbath institutionalized an astonishing, hitherto undreamed of notion that every single creature has the right to rest, not just the rich and privileged. Covered under the fourth commandment are women, slaves, strangers, and improbably animals. Because God rested, and we're created imago Dei, in the image of God. We rest in order to honor the divine in us, to remind ourselves that there is more to us than just what we're doing during the week. The Sabbath is to the week what the line break is to the poetic language. It's the silence that forces you to return to what came before, to find its meaning. What was creation's climactic culmination? The act of stopping. Why should God have considered it so important to stop? Rabbi Elijah of Vilna put it this way: God stopped to show us that what we created becomes meaningful to us only once we stop creating it and start to think about why we did so. Judith Shulevitz ends her article with these words: we have to remember to stop because we have to stop to remember. This morning, we stopped to remember the 10 Commandments, not the highest peaks of spiritual achievement, but the basic DNA of all life, a life that we share with all creation. Or to put it in words that come from the psalm reading for today, the 10 Commandments are the rock and bedrock on which every life must be built. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Psalm 19, verse 14. And let's end this sermon today by stopping to remember our spiritual DNA, the genes, not the proteins, and read the Decalogue together. And God spoke all these words: I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of their fathers, to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your manservant or maidservant, nor your animals, nor the alien within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbors. Amen.
Amen.